problems for us, right? Because the tax collectors can actually come over here to collect tax from us, even though we are not selling tickets. So this is something that I did not do. So in a way, we already, violated the law a little bit by simply showing films on campus. That's against the law. That's this outdated piece of regulation. Now, I'll leave that aside. Now, most importantly, what I want to say is that just imagine you were me, sitting here, running films every semester. The dream that you have is to run a Malaysian film festival. I've been thinking about this for many years, but at least some 10 years ago, or 7 or 8 years ago, you know that this would not have been possible because it's so hard to send the film reels over here. Right? And I did not want to show films on video. I wanted to show films on reels. So it did not materialize until 4 years ago, 5 years ago, we purchased a DVD, a DCP machine that we could show films on DCP. And I began to ask, actually. In fact, in the year 2013, I went to the Olympic Game. We went to Singapore. Was it 2013? 2012? Right. We were there at a conference. Yeah, 2013 or 12, 13, I think. All right, we met a lot of filmmakers, right? Using that, so on and so forth. And also the director of the Tiger Factory, Beijing. A lot of that, right? Of course, the only person missing from that conference was Cheng. Right? I only meet Cheng this time, legendary figure. And then actually I talked with the director Stan whether I could hold a film festival over here. Not until late last year, when I sat down with Yixin and Zikri, right? And then suddenly this idea popped up. And that was the right moment because we had the right people.
And women power.
Right. And eventually we made it to make this film festival possible. Mainly because even though I'm a film scholar, I know so little about Malaysian films. Perhaps I'm the least qualified person to sit here. Originally, we had someone else, right? But he could not be here. So eventually, of course, I just feel that I should fill in the space. To hold this film festival, there are three main reasons. The first reason is, of course, personal one, because I want to take this opportunity to watch the Malaysian films. Even though I have the DVDs, they still cannot help me to form this complete picture. Now, the second reason is that, of course, holding this film festival in Taiwan can help our Chinese friends to know what happens in Malaysia. And still, a lot of people in Taiwan still don't understand this country. It's very surprising that we have so many Malaysian students here. At this moment, we have, the figure may shock you, we have 8,000 Malaysians studying in Taiwan, right? And there are a lot of graduates, more than 8,000 current students studying over here. In this university, we have nearly 200 Malaysian students. And next door in another university, Tsinghua University, we have also 200. Right? Imagine the number. But I guess a lot of you, especially those of you from Malaysia, perhaps today is the first time for you to have watched a Tamil film made in Malaysia, right? And for me, this is the first time as well. And perhaps to some of you, this is the first time for you to watch a Malay film, right? So that makes me feel, that we should hold this film festival. Now, I also would like to be a bit autobiographical, right? Because just now I talked about this personal reason why I wanted to host this film fest. Now, growing up in Malaysia, especially someone like me, growing up in the 1970s, we had no other entertainment. Right? We watched TV all the time. Actually, the most films we watched were the Indian films. many of them, right? And then, of course, in the meantime, Pyramid films were also running on TV. I guess I watched all of them, right? Yesterday, Dr. Norman talked about this relationship between the Three Stooges and Doremi. I just feel that Doremi is smarter, right? The Three Stooges is stupid, Doremi is smart, stupid, I think, right? And a lot of the time when we watch Pyramid films, from my memory now, we knew that Pyramid was having fun making those films. We knew that he was having fun, he was having a good time, right? Even as a child, we knew that. That's why we enjoyed this figure very much. And it is so unforgettable. As a result, we will watch his films over and over and over again. All right? In a way. Hopefully, I have not watched Pyramid for a long time. Hopefully, when I watch it again, I still feel the same. I should feel the same. I think that this guy is having a good time. Then there's some experience that cannot be replaced by some other things. Right? And I don't see the same figure in other national cinemas. Except it's hard. It's hard to find someone like him. Right? So it's very unique. Now, I want to mention this mainly because so many years later, I just feel that I need to revisit this childhood experience, meaning that those films that I watched when I was a child, became part of myself. Right? And then so to know what happened in the past is very, very important because it's something very personal. Because I grew up watching those films along with other children. Right? Okay. I left Malaysia in 1983 to come to Taiwan to study. Right? Now, a lot of the time, the decisions you made were also made by the condition you were in. Probably you do not have so many choices. And then suddenly I came to Taiwan mainly because there was this good opportunity to study here. And also because, at that time, I was fed up. Even as a teenager, I was fed up with the politics of racialization. I don't want to say racism, right? Racism would be too heavy a term. I'll say racialization. By racialization, I mean that, when you are born an ethnic Chinese, you are expected by everyone, by the community, even by the political institution, education institution, to act like a Chinese. You are forced into playing this expected role as Chinese. But then I came to Taiwan to study English, like Tim Dong. He also came to Taiwan to study English. How come a Chinese educated kid cannot fall in love with Hamlet? Right? So we came here to study English. We did not come here to study Chinese literature, right? Because we are interested in something else. Of course, what a blessing it was to study in an English department because in the English department, you would naturally find that film is part of the curriculum. Even today, in a lot of places, in America as well, in an English department, some courses are just about film, right? So that's how I went into film studies. Okay, now and then later on, of course, I went to America for my PhD, and then for some unknown reason, I got a job at this university to teach English. Both of us are teaching English for a living. So in a way, running away from Malaysia, escaping away from Malaysia, we also escape from this racialization that people expect you to act in a certain way, and then we find certain kind of freedom, but to act like a Chinese or to not act like a Chinese, and then we get this freedom to do something else. Now, of course, during the interval, we keep reflecting on our experience growing up in Malaysia. We just cannot escape that. You keep reflecting about this experience. Now, one thing that struck me during my journey back to Malaysia is that at least before 2000, right? Before directors like Yasmin or Cheng came into the scene, I didn't see, or I wasn't aware of any, films, local films that speak to me, right? But along the way, especially before the year 2000, every time I went back to Malaysia, I kept hearing stories. Right? Friends and family members would tell me stories about certain incidents. I just feel that those stories were worth making films, or at least worth being written as novel stories. But they were not. No one was there, to talk about those stories. I just can raise one example, right? The Nipah virus incident. Right, I came from Port Exen. Bukit Belanda was was actually in Port Exen, and then when the Nipah virus incident struck, a lot of my friends died. The whole village was demolished, gone. Nipah, 1998, around that time, right? And then I heard stories. About friends. They, up until today, stories about this place have not been, as far as I know, have not been told in Chinese literature in Malaysia. Right?
I think there's a representation in
Okay, all right. And anyway, I'm glad to hear that at least people, notice that. Now that's what I mean. Okay, eventually, that brings me to what I mainly want to say to today. All right. That over the years, what I find is that we face at least three problems. The first is that the first problem we face is that we are being unable to form a discourse. At least for myself personally, I have not been able to form a discourse on what I watched as a child. I find that I need this knowledge, right? And mainly, I say this mainly because I find that I'm not to blame because I simply do not have access, to what happens in the past. Until finally, we have people like Gaik, Cheng, and Norman, right? Very, very important to fill up this gap, right? For us, that's why we invite them to be here, helping us, at least helping me to fill up what I did not make it to do, or I do not make it to do. And the second thing is, the second leg that we face is the issue of racialization, right? Has not been overcome. But we see the issue of racialization being overcome in the films made by the directors, right? Our directors are very, very smart, right? They have a higher view, longer view, larger view, to overcome this issue of racialization. So any story told by the filmmakers, is not just a story of one ethnic group. I don't think it is. The filmmakers are too smart. For example, I just want to raise the film Lalaki Harapan Dunia, but when watching this film, I feel very painful. I can fully identify with them because just look at those people. The Chinese people act the same way because within the Chinese community, we always look for our orang minyak to hate. We also have our orang minyak problem. It's the same. Only that in this film, if you know how to watch it, you wouldn't think that this is a film about Malay superstition. It is not. It is a Malaysian story, right? I don't think this film means to be an allegory or some sort. No, by dealing with the problem within a kampong, within a village. If you know how to watch it, you know immediately this is not the problem of just Malay kampong. No, it is a problem of all the Malaysians, including in the Chinese community. That's how we act. That's how we think, especially in terms of this person who doesn't want to believe other people's ideologies. He becomes isolated. And then when everyone wants to look for this orang minyak that doesn't exist. That's the way Malaysians think. And I would argue that's the way the Chinese community is thinking all the time. Always looking for an enemy that doesn't exist. All right, racialization. And then the third issue is that we have been unable to tell a story that's worth telling. All right, 3 problems I see here. That we are unable to form a discourse on what we watched as a child, and issue of racialization, and we are unable to tell a story that's worth telling. Now, so far, I have described the problem we face in Malaysia in negative terms. We are unable to do this, we are unable to do that. But all these problems, that's why I'm so happy about the films this time. I find that having watched the films this time, all these films have helped us to face these 3 problems positively. And in a way, all these films have told me that I'm wrong. The films, all right, can tell us, can form a discourse on our childhood, on how we grow up. All right, the films have made it to overcome the issue of racialization, and finally, the films can tell very, very good stories that are worth telling. In a way, sitting down there just now when I was talking with Gaik, right? We both agree that Jagat is a film that has come very, very late. This film should have been made a long time ago. They are all late. All these films we see, they should have been there a long time ago. Thanks to them, eventually, at least they arrived. Films such as Shut the Life, Want to Java, right? The corruption, police corruption in Malaysia. Everyone knows, except the people in Bukit Aman do not know. Everyone knows, but this film only came out. Want to Java only came out late last year. So all these films are late, but still better late than never. Eventually, they are here. Now, finally, before I close, I just want to say one thing about the theme of the festival this time. Anxiety. I just feel that, of course, it is a right title. But after watching these films, I begin to understand the anxiety is mainly caused by the displaced life we see in all these films. Right? In Shuttle Life, you want to jaga in Jagat. I don't want to sleep tonight. Do good. Right? And also, not to mention Lalaki Harman. We see lives that are being displaced as to why we have this anxiety. And I also want to make this. I want to lead to this conclusion. All these lives, displaced life, are there partly also because the filmmakers, the Malaysian filmmakers, they all lead a displaced life as well. How hard it is to be a filmmaker in Malaysia. As a result, their anxiety and edginess all come through to the films they make. Right? So in a way, the filmmakers are trying to, bring across to us, right, the displaced situation they are in. You have to live like that. You have to live like a filmmaker in Malaysia in order to know how displaced life is in Malaysia, as to why we feel this strong edginess and anxiety. I feel very thankful that eventually, I have learned so much about life from Malaysian filmmakers. Thank you.
Thank you so much for giving us so much insights and thoughts to ponder upon. We have touched upon a lot of issues such as the discourse of national identity, national cinema, national literature, the question of language and ethnicity and racialization, which seemed that we couldn't escape. That when we talk about Malaysian cinema, when we talk about ethnicity, it seems that we still have to talk about that right now. But how do we face such kind of problem? And we also talk about the changing industry of the Malaysian film industry since the 50s, 60s, 70s period, which is very interesting that Dr. Norman pointed out. After May 13th, there's what he called the independent period. How independent were they if they were buying into the state kind of narrative? And also the so-called millennials period, the so-called new wave, the Malaysian new wave. Actually, for me, my Malaysian film experience started with the new wave. So it was a little bit late when I was high school. If you guys have read a bit of the curatorial note of mine here, I started with Cui Mei. Yeah, it was very late when I was still a high school student. So I was not that young. It was the last year of my high school. So I read Cui Mei as a literary use, the kind of wenqing. So we love indie films with that kind of poetic tone. What Cui Mei's films really touched upon the issues of how a girl wander like aimlessly to the future life. So I think because that here we have the younger generation, maybe they also started with new wave when they came across Malaysian cinema. So I think there must be some questions and comments on the discussion that we just had just now. So is there anyone who would like to raise the questions first? Or comments? Zig?
Hello. Thank you so much for the reflection and the insight. So maybe I have a couple of questions because we are so it would be great for us to have more discussions. For example, because since for now we are in the so-called new Malaysia, so there might be a new anxiety coming in. But then again, how do we have new ways of seeing things, new ways of subjectivities? Because since for now, there is a stunted version of how are we seeing things. So I guess maybe the first question is, when we're talking about films, it's actually an ecosystem. It's an amalgamation of every forms of cultural production. For example, literature, images, photography, and whatnot. So in that sense, because I still remember that like Professor Khoo Cheng in your discussion about insight, he mentioned that in order to grasp one of the characterization of the character in the film, he cannot find any literature that can depict the anxiety, the existentialist angst that he has to face. So for me, is it because we don't really read much our own literature in order to find that particular emotion? For example, because I was also referring to your own book about Reclaiming Adat, that where you combine films and literature in order to understand the society formation. So it would be great for you to see there's a new forms of production has been ongoing. So how do you see along this particular trajectory for almost 20 years or maybe 30 years of your research has been ongoing? And then the second one is about the questions of national cultural policy, which I presume provide a rupture in our society, and how are we going to produce our cultural production, where we know that in order for, like you already have discussed before about the Malaysian cultural production, like it might be about Malay or Muslim, and then some points from any other cultural traits, like maybe from Chinese or Indian and whatnot. But how do we see things beyond this kind of fragmentation? And another thing is about the questions of the possibilities of cultural movement to emerge, because I am very interested to see how, for example, the Malaysian New Wave, what exactly the ruptures that provide them to come in, the political breakdown that actually provide, and because for most of the, like if you're going to see different forms of New Wave, like French New Wave and whatnot, they are very much engaged with the politics directly. But then again, of course, I didn't say that in Malaysia we didn't engage directly. Of course, we engage in a different forms. But then again, how is it possible for us to see as in a holistic manner? How can we see it as a possibility of a cultural movement to emerge? Because I see there's a lacuna, there's loopholes in what exactly is cultural movement in Malaysia, unless we were talking about the Asas 50, where they actually provide those kind of envision, those kind of trajectory for the society to be formed on what kind of foreground, what kind of aesthetics, for example. So do you see this kind of anxiety can actually provide us push forward for the future? Thank you.
This is for Prof. Khoo or for everyone?
All for you.
I'll see what I can fill in. Cultural movement to emerge. Hard to say. Cultural movement to emerge. Okay, so let's just look at the policy changes, and they're going to be slow under the new government. Well, I think the film community were very anxious when the PH government was still trying to pick the new minister. You know, like, is film going to come under the Minister of Media Communications, or is it going to come under Culture, Heritage, and Tourism? And this was a thing, and there was a kind of informal meeting called, and people were discussing what to do, because at that point, Datuk Kamil Osman, who was the FINA's Director General for 2 years, and then Director General, right? Yeah, he was, and then his contract finished, but they didn't like him. So within the government, they were trying to, within FINAS, they were trying to push him out because he was too, shall we say, cosmopolitan. Because he had come from the corporate sector and was an accountant, so he was much more about transparency and putting in key KPIs to and targets. And what he did, which I don't see them continuing under the new DG, is that he would have once a month an open meeting, like a town hall meeting with him, where, and this was very interesting because actually you saw how unhappy people were. Like, they had gone to FINAS asking for how to get grants, or they would apply, they didn't get grants, or things were not transparent. It really showed you how inefficient the system was, and he would try to address that and improve the system, make it much more transparent. But what you then also saw was that within that so-called mainstream, there were younger people who were very unhappy again about the racialization, about just the incompetence and the inefficiencies, and they realized it wasn't even down to race or ethnicity. It was really down to cronyism and people who wanted to apply for grants and weren't even good at the job and just took the money and went to buy a car. So it was those things that really led to this kind of push. But so when his term and so these sort of town hall meetings are very important to get a sense of whether there are going to be policy shifts and that it provides good feedback to improve policy. We'll see whether that's going to happen with the new. I don't foresee it, to tell the truth, because the two new people within the industry, people like Namron who've been interviewed in the press say, let's just give them time. It's good that they're, in some senses, they actually know what the industry is about, and I'm like, well, isn't there a conflict of interest? Because maybe they're just going to support their buddies' projects. and then it's just going to be the same old thing. But he said, of course, there's now a board, right? There's a board of directors. Mui, you're on it, right? No? Are you on it, right? No. So supposedly there's a board, and I think Sanjay might be in it. Yeah, and maybe a few other people. So that everything has to still be approved by the board. So we'll see, because then Finas now comes under the